Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. As you all know, my name is Katie Koestner, the founder of Take Back the Night, and I myself am a survivor, journeying right along with most of you who are also navigating that healing process through the podcast. So, welcome to all of our listeners back. And remember, self care is important always. So, take a break if you need to. I think you're going to really learn a lot from our guest today, Laurel. Mellin has done so much incredible work for so many years and has really been a pioneer in a lot of ways, in ways that we will learn about during the show today. So welcome, Laurel, and I'll just read a little bit about you. Laurel Mellin is a health psychologist and founder of Emotional Brain Training, which is EBT. And this is a method for rewiring trauma that can be integrated into self-care as well as psychotherapy. She developed EBT during her 42 years as a professor of medicine at the University of California, San Francisco, and she is a New York Times bestselling author. She directs Solution Foundation, which trains health professionals in this method, EBT, and she has her own private practice in the method. So welcome, Laurel. We can't wait to learn more.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I know you're on the West Coast. Have you always been on the West Coast since you
I live right now 1 mile from where I was born.
Oh my goodness,
and,
that's incredible.
and part of that is stability. I have a lot of stress, instability, change, chaos going on. And, I love my little house, and I live in a little town just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I work 7 days a week, and
Oh
I'm
my
a
goodness.
very happy person. Have Grew up here and started out as a nutritionist, trying to solve the root cause of eating disorders because I had one.
Oh
And
God.
I got into understanding that it was really about trauma and
Okay.
became a health psychologist and went from there.
Okay, well, let's definitely go back and talk about that connection because we haven't actually talked a lot about eating disorders on the show. So I think that would be a really good, important topic because that whole body connection for those who've been through trauma is a critical part of the healing journey. And we've talked a lot, Laurel, about with other guests, just for your own edification, about different ways to reconnect with the body. Like one of our guests out towards you, she does a thing called hiking my feelings. So it's all about like getting back in the body through being outside. So I can't wait to learn about the EBT and also, I guess how you started out. But you're right there and near where you grew up. Did you go to college in California as well?
I went to, I was in high school having depression and, family problems. I didn't know what to do with my feelings. And so I had the depression and the eating disorder and other problems. I went to UC Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my husband to be was going to graduate early. So I graduated in 3 years, went
Wow.
through really quickly. And then he went into the service and I went into figuring out who I was really going to be. And
Interesting. That's so interesting. And Berkeley is such a great school. It has, such an incredible student body and the faculty as well. So did you get married then right out of
I
college?
I got married at the age of 21 to my childhood sweetheart, my first boyfriend, my only boyfriend. And that was great because when I met him, I kind of hid in that relationship rather than dealing with some of my problems. I became kind of addicted to him.
Oh,
And and that never really works out very well. But the good news is I had children, and we eventually grew up and went our own ways, and we have a friendship now, but I can't say it was always like that.
okay.
And went on to get a doctorate. I was at the university. I got a job at the university as a faculty member, and I started to go with my passion, which is what I totally recommend. And I went with my passion, which was to find the root cause of why people overate. I had that problem. But it turned out the more I studied it, the more I realized that overeating was just the symptom of trauma in the brain.
Oh,
And that unless you get to the trauma, and the trauma is not in the thinking brain, it's in the emotional brain. And when you go to the emotional brain, you solve everything. So just what you were talking about, like hiking,
interesting.
whatever. So essentially, the circuits in the emotional brain connect your body, your mind, your spirit, your biochemistry, your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It's all locked into circuits in the brain. And if you change the circuits in the brain that cause the trauma, you start to heal on all levels. You don't have to split the person. You can always do extra things like that and that are very helpful. But if you want a solution, you go to the brain, to the circuits in the brain, and that's what the most direct path to healing.
So yeah, that was a lot to take in, Laurel, but let's just think about it some more, and if I can talk it out loud. So, I guess my rudimentary understanding was left brain, right brain. We have these two, one does the emotional, creative side, and one does the math and processing and analytical side. So, is there another part of the brain that I'm missing? The emotional brain? Is there a
No,
third part? Or you always also hear. I think you hear that frontal lobe's not fully developed with like delay the
yeah,
gratification with teenagers. So
yeah.
tell us more about the brain first.
Well, you can, and I was just thinking, take your pick. You can either say left and right hemisphere, or thinking brain and
Mhm.
feeling brain.
Okay.
I prefer thinking and feeling because the thinking brain is associated with right hemisphere. The thinking brain is associated with left hemisphere. The right hemisphere is associated with the emotional brain. So essentially, it's the same thing. The reason I prefer thinking brain and emotional brain is what we're going to do in order to change what's in the emotional brain, which are the circuits, and I'll tell you about that, is you have to use your thinking brain differently. Nobody can medicate themselves out of trauma.
Mm,
It can help you get up past some really tough times, but it's not going to solve the problem. And you can't think your way or be mindfully aware or even meditate your way out of trauma very easily because the trauma leaves circuits in your emotional brain that can only be rewired by stress activating the circuits and experiencing your emotions in a healthier way,
mm.
effectively
Can you,
processing the emotion.
so can you give me an example? Are you saying, when we talk about triggers, is a trigger an emotional response to an external factor? Like if I smell the scent of the cologne of the guy who assaulted me, or if my perpetrator was a smoker and the smoke, is that
It's perfect.
help me get more on the right track.
So, okay. So if you start fresh, you say that we are the circuits in
Mhm.
the amygdala, in the emotional brain, that are wires that tell us how upset to get and
Oh,
how much chemicals. So our emotional response and how many stress chemicals we need to activate is commensurate with that level of threat. Then
okay.
what to do to feel better or who we are in that situation, a message that actually could be put to words at some point, and then a response. So it's like emotions with all these chemicals, then some kind of an unconscious message about what to do to feel better or who we are or what life's about. And then we just are caught in this wave and we respond accordingly. So we're all about circuits in our brain. That's really all there is there.
Okay.
Everything comes from that. Once the circuit's been activated, then we can use our thinking brain to figure out why did I do that or analyze it. But actually, we're prisoners of our emotional brain because the circuits are activated just like you said. Like if you were around cigarette smoking and that was the perpetrator actually had your brain had associated the smoking with that traumatic experience,
Mhm.
then the traumatic experience just shows up in your whole body. You feel you actually are experiencing it again. You can actually be re-traumatized.
Okay.
Right?
That makes a lot of sense, Laurel. And that's something I think a lot of our listeners are going to be familiar with is how they get triggered, and either they, some people tap, or there's all kinds of responses. Where, I guess, if I could ask, if like, you were talking about eating disorders and or controlled eating or out of control eating. Um, that's just one thing, or some people might do some other behavior as a response. So where does the output of the trigger happen? Like you said, yelling or screaming or, how is that wired? How does that become wired as a response?
That's a different question. So,
Okay.
okay, so you're giving me really good questions. The yelling is actually a response to the pain,
Like
right? I
physical
mean, come on.
pain?
No, so when there's a stress response, the metabolic stress, the psychological stress, and the physical stress all get thrown into the same hopper in
Okay.
the brain.
Mhm.
And so when that circuit is reactivated, you're going to get the emotional response, you're going to get the chemicals to the extent that it's driven, and if it's been a traumatic response, you're gonna have a fight or flight drive to repeat whatever it is with a message, and then you're going to act in a certain way to feel better.
Mhm.
Okay, so essentially in the if someone's screaming because they're so upset, that's
Mhm.
an emotional response to the circuit, to the trauma that's happening.
Okay.
Okay. But the unfortunately, the screaming, although it's sometimes useful, it's not an efficient way to rewire the circuit.
Right. It doesn't sound like it's doing anything except for maybe exacerbating the problem.
Well, it could be, and what happens then is screaming could become the way of escaping the actual pain, and this is an important point, is there's 2 kinds of emotions that you experience, or that we all experience. One are just basic feelings where we say, "How do I feel and what do I need?" Right?
Mhm.
And those are very helpful. If you can stay present to your body and you can feel your feelings until they fade, even if they're terrible feelings,
Mhm.
in particular if they're terrible feelings, you're healing the circuit that's still stuck in your brain that you're gonna be living with the rest of your life unless you feel the feelings and heal them. So what we're looking for is being able to stay present to the emotions when the circuit is activated.
Okay.
If instead you try to escape, your brain sends you in a direction where you escape the pain,
Mhm.
staying present to the emotions that have come up, you develop various what's called external solutions. Those are wires in and of themselves. So you might get stuck in hostility, but
Mm.
you're not feeling the balanced feelings until they fade. You're in a
Okay.
whole different world, and that hostility or depression, or a sense of shame, all of those are, much like smoking or drinking or eating, and they're a way of getting outside of feeling that being present to the actual emotions, and when you're present to the emotions until they fade, you have to sit with them until they fade, it heals the circuits that are making your life hell.
And how long does that process take? Like, how many times do you need to sit with the feelings to rewire? Is it like
Well, li
exercise, like growing a muscle almost?
it's what you do with EBT is you come in and you get the skills,
Mhm.
and then the rule is it takes as long as it takes. At first, you'll
That
use
sounds
this.
daunting, Laurel. It takes and then a lot of people are like, "Oh, no, that's scary. I don't even know, like, if I can do it once," right?
Well, I'll show you that the way EBT works is you never do more than you can do, and it's never dangerous. The tools are so consistent with the healing pathways in the brain that even when you use them to begin with, you will always feel much better when you come out than in. It's
Okay.
just that it's like a muscle where your brain gets better at it, so the brain says, "Okay, we're gonna go a little deeper in the brain, and we're actually gonna get that trauma circuit done." To begin with, maybe you get at some daily stress that bothers you, and then deeper and deeper, because your brain needs to be exercised in that, along those resiliency pathways, but there's a set way of doing it I can share with you.
Okay.
Um, okay, so it's a process. Oddly enough, there is just one tool you have to learn. There's actually 5 different levels of stress in the brain, and you learn a bunch of other things. But in truth, the number 1 tool you use is called the cycle tool, and what it does is it dips down into trauma. It activates the circuits in a certain way so you don't have to escape, so you can stay present, and in very short order, you rip apart that trauma circuit, you unlock it, and you turn it out of stress overload and into joy.
That sounds magical.
It is magical, but it's part of everyone's brain. And that's why we think everyone should have these skills. And the reason that it goes to joy is not because our DNA wants us to be happy, but because when we get to joy, our biochemistry is ideal, and that's best for survival of the species. So it's baked into our everyone has a brain that if they process the toxic emotions with this EBT formula, and all we've done is taken what happens in the best brains, surrounded by the best, most loving therapist or mother or significant other, and how it unravels the emotions really quickly, and we just put it into a skill set. So even though you're in EBT groups where people will listen to you because being listened to is very important, you also have the structure or the strategy or the tool so you can do a lot of that yourself as well. Because we wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and we're miserable, we're terrified, and we need to be able to use the pathways in our brain of healing so we suffer less. But it's really just one major skill that you learn to fall in love with it because it gives you relief, but it's true for everyone. So if you go to psychotherapy, we hope all therapists are trained in this. So if you're going to a therapist, please ask your therapist to go to eptcertification.com and get certified in this because it goes right down to the trauma circuits. And it prepares you not only to be, you can go to therapy, you can do EMDR, you can do a bunch of different things. But the root cause of not us healing is that we don't know how to process our toxic emotions back into that joyous state that essentially heals us and also gives us a dopamine surge, so we lock in the new wiring and we get rewired faster. So what this will do is fast forward your therapy, but it also give you the security of knowing that you know how to work your brain, so you'll suffer less and heal faster.
Okay, so just so I'm more clear, I want to go back to the EDMR, that too. But before, what is when you said there's one tool, like let's say I'm having a trigger and I want to scream or flight, run away. What's the thing to do first when you have that sensation come on of the trigger?
Well, what
Kind
you would do is you would use something called there's actually 5 tools in EBT
of,
if
okay,
for 5 levels of stress in the brain. Most of the trauma is down at the reptilian brain in which is the 5 state, brain state 5, which is trauma, and 4, which is very, very high stress. And that's down where the reptilian brain is in charge. And then as we're less stressed, the limbic brain is in charge. That's 3 when you're a little stressed. And then 2 when you're feeling pretty good, and then 1 when you're in joy. So there's 5, you learn that you're 5 different people. And this is good, great for anyone recovering from these experiences, is that you should know that you are 5 different people. Because when you're at brain state 5, all your memories from 5 are going to be hot or online. Your biochemistry is going to be that way. Your emotions, your thoughts and behaviors are going to be extreme. And so when you're at 5, you used to think, well, I must be crazy, or I could never get out of this, or I'm a complete failure, or I have no power. All of those messages come because you're at brain state 5, and that's where the brain is extremely extreme, and it's going to be shut down or ramped up. So you begin to learn there's 5 different levels of stress.
hmm
But in general, you're going to use the tool, there's a damage control tool for brain state 5, where you stop the damage because at that stage the circuit is just pounding at you. And so you end up, saying some things to it like do not judge, minimize harm, know it will pass, and then you give yourself oceans of self-compassion that gives you this particular tool that helps you really see yourself in the present moment for who you are and give yourself love and compassion. So that damage control tool is great. But in terms of really healing the circuit, it is the cycle tool. And I can, and what you do is you complain, and then you express, you have to complain. You have to say, this is going on, and this is going on, and this is going on. And then you let rip with anger in a certain way. If you just get into a rage, it's actually counterproductive
And when you
because
say, the part where you complain, are you saying to do that audibly, like out loud, or
it doesn't. but it
Write
doesn't
it
matter.
down?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can do it writing down, you can do it with a friend, you can do it yourself because your brain can't tell the difference.
Okay.
But you say like, the situation is, um, I'm overwhelmed, or I hate that person, or what. It doesn't matter. Once you learn the tools, you can use it for anything. But
Okay.
you complain only 5 sentences. And the reason only 5 sentences is because 5 sentences are enough to activate the circuit that's killing you, that's harming you, that's making you suffer. And what you want to do at that point is when the circuit is open, you want to use the emotional processing because that's the only thing that really changes it. You can talk to a therapist for years and they calm you down, which is can be very good. And I think it's could be very helpful. But if you want a solution, you've got to get rid of the circuits. And so you use that energy to go down and use this process of expressing anger very effectively, but in a safe way. One sadness of your grief, and you feel the feelings until they fade. You don't just keep on talking. You feel it like I feel angry that, and then you feel it in your body and it's effervescent and it goes through your whole body until it fades. And then one fear that if you don't resolve this, what will happen? And then where your power is. And once you hit the power button, things change and you'll either move through your emotions and spiral up to positive feelings, or if there's trauma circuits down there, it will welcome you to find out the message in that circuit and unlock the circuit. So if you give it the opposite message at that time, it will change it. This is very different than DBT or CBT. They keep you in your thinking brain and trying to analyze and rationalize and change things. That's not going to work. You have to go into the emotional brain, activate that circuit, and then essentially rip it apart with your emotions and then move it over to another message of your choosing that gets rid of, reconsolidates, erases the old circuit in small but important ways, and activates the new one. Okay, so that's how you have to face that you must feel.
Mhm.
And what EBT does is it gives you a tool kit so that you can actually feel and it's safe and it's productive and it makes you heal much faster because you've gone right to the root cause of the problem rather than talking about all your feelings about this and that and why did they do this and all that.
Mhm.
Staying above the fray, you're going into the fray, you're activating that circuit and you're destroying it, and then the brain rewards you immediately with a burst of joy.
Okay. And then I guess maybe can you give a more concrete example of a situation and someone doing this and what the circumstances were?
Yeah, so let's say, but I'd like to show you what the procedure is for healing in just a moment of how you
Okay.
start this. But I will say it's like, let's say that it was with, if you give me any kind of an example, I'll go ahead and run with it. What's a common thing that comes up for people watching this that they're upset about? What would be something that they would complain about?
Um, some that they don't get they something happened, right? They were assaulted and people don't believe them, right?
Okay, so right. So again, you're gonna keep it very simple. Once you learn how to use the EBT cycle tool, every single problem in your life will go through the same process because the brain's very picky, it likes this process. So again, the concern again is people don't believe me,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I'm gonna do a quick cycle for you, okay?
Okay.
I'll I'll do a demo. Okay, so the situation is, um, I tell people what's going on. I told them what happened to me. Nobody believes them. And the more I talk to them about it, the more they don't believe me. And so I'm sitting there bleeding my heart, telling them what's true, and they don't even believe me. Okay. That
Okay.
has now unlocked the circuit. You're with me, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to pause and remember it's all about the emotional brain. So I need to connect with my body where I experience my emotional brain. So I'm going to pause. The pause here is everything. If not, you're just on your head and you're doing nothing better than DBT or CBT. You're just in your head. Okay. We want to go into the pit. And so then I'm going to pause until I feel connected. That means my brain is connected again. And so I'm really staying present to my emotions, which is going to do everything. And so I say, what I'm most stressed about is they don't believe me, period. Okay. Now I'm going to use those words as if they were as good as gold because they are. because those words have now activated the exact circuit that is amplifying my suffering, and it's unlocked the circuit. So how on earth am I going to stay present to those emotions so that I won't be living with this hurt for the rest of my life? What I'm going to do is I am going to have to use anger. And the reason I'm going to have to use anger is it is the only negative emotion in the brain associated with not surrender. Anger is associated with approach and power. Sadness, fear, guilt, surrender. I'm just a big victim. Now we want those emotions, but not right now, because you've just activated a circuit and those stress chemicals are going to have you shut down or
Okay.
trigger a response you don't want. Okay. So you learn to do this almost like a knee-jerk reaction. We train you how to do this. You immediately go into anger, but you don't go into a rage, because that would be its own response that's unhealthy, because then you get caught up in the rage and you can't get out of the rage, or depression or anxiety. And you say, I feel angry that they don't believe me. Now that's about brain state 3 right here. And so it's, you can tolerate that. You can stay emotionally connected then. So you're warming up here. And then you go down to 4, I can't stand it that they don't believe me. See, the gradual approach keeps the brain healing. And then I hate it that they don't believe me. And then you go into the rage. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I really, really hate it. I friggin' hate it. And then expletives are really appreciated here. I hate it. I hate it. I friggin' hate it. I 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 hate it. The whole time the brain is staying connected and you're healing. And this is the beauty of it. You do that, and your brain will not only activate the circuit, but turn you into a person who can lovingly connect with yourself. This is a healing moment because it turns into tender, sweet sadness that has a backfield of loving connection to yourself. Right then, if you didn't do the anger first, you'd go into depression. And then you'd have to analyze your depression or take pills for your depression or whatever that is. So my one deepest sadness is, and you're using your own nurturing voice. You learn to use your vocal tone because as babies, we bonded with our mother in utero with her voice. So you learn to use your voice when you're talking to yourself. My one deepest sadness is they don't trust me or they don't believe in me. And then you absolutely do not speak because you want to stay in your body and you feel your feelings until they fade, just feeling the sadness. And when that fades, it naturally turns into fear. I feel afraid that if I don't resolve my stress about this situation, that my stressor is that I'm experiencing them not believing me. The consequence to me is, and then you say whatever it is, the consequence to me is I'm going to be miserable all day. Or I'm going to have to roll up in a ball and never get out of bed. Or I'm going, but you essentially give yourself motivation to do the emotional processing to clear it by looking at the consequence of not doing it. And then you move into the last one, which is, hey, everybody. And this is your joyful now because you want to clear the stress. So you're using a voice that's very joyful, even if you're not joyful, because the brain doesn't know the difference. And you say, hey, everybody, I do have some power here. I feel guilty. Why don't I just do the sensible thing and not care? Who are they anyway? Or whatever comes to mind because it's coming out of your body.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point, if it's just situational stress, you'll be drawn to saying, hey, but I do feel grateful that I'm alive and I feel happy that, I don't always think about this and I feel secure that I'll figure this out at some time. And I feel proud of myself that I'm processing my emotions. And you'll be back to joy and brain state 1. Your body will tell you what to do. So stop. So trust your body with these tools. Because if in fact there's a big old circuit down there, some belief or some triggered response that my brain knows I need to heal, it will be more rewarding to say, of course, I'm not just going to let it go because my unreasonable expectation is they have to be perfect. I get my safety from them. I'll die if they don't listen to me. But you wait for the words from the circuit to come up from your unconscious mind because it's all in the unconscious mind. That's why the cognitive methods have very limited effectiveness. They can be helpful, but they can't cure you. They can't get you out of those circuits. And then what happens is you just essentially say the opposite thing. And you do that over and over again. Sometimes, and this goes to your point, Katie, they sometimes, because the emotional brain is this, like I say, the seat of the soul, the center of really life. Everything that matters and everything that hurts us and heals us is in the emotional brain. And so people change in unpredictable ways. You never know when the next cycle that you do, this spiraling up out of the stress, is going to wipe out the circuit. If you hit it straight on, and it's usually a bundle of circuits if you've had this abuse. But let's say you don't know, because if they're emotional circuits and they all are attached to each other, you happen to hit it right, and you can have freedom from that, and you'll say, "What just happened? I'm not anxious anymore." Other times you feel great each time, and you feel better. You get that dopamine, you get that joy feeling, but then you know that it's a work in progress. You're going to continue to clear those circuits because they're real. They're like germs, and when we had before we had antibiotics, people died because we didn't know what was causing infectious diseases. And then when we finally figured out it was germs, and you figure out how to get rid of the germs, a lot fewer people died from these pandemics. Well, the germ that we have today for anyone in trauma and for other people too, but much more for people that have had horrific experiences, is the stress circuits in your amygdala. And EBT gives you a direct way to control them and clear them. And that's how you can fast forward your healing.
And Laurel, okay, that was super helpful. Really, really, really clear. And the, the I guess my other question then is this process compared to the EDMR, how, what do they work together? Are they totally different?
Uh, EBT replaces EMDR. If you want to use a little EMDR there, you might do that. What EBT was developed at the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine. It basically is the whole banana.
Mhm.
It's basically look at your emotional brain. How does it work and how do you heal it? Well, you get the skills so that when you're in stress, you can process them and get out of that state and clear the stress. And the same tools rewire the circuits. So you get kind of the preventive everyday self-regulation, and you get the EMDR equivalent. But with EBT, because it's simple and it's in an app and you can do it in groups, so you have people around you, you don't have to have a therapist. You are your therapist. It's great to have a therapist if you have one, but the issue is to be dependent upon a therapist instead of having the tools you can use yourself isn't practical in this world, particularly because you and I have enough trauma going on that we could be activated at any time. You can't just be dependent upon your therapist. You need to have it yourself.
Mm.
But I do want to give people listening a pathway to healing that's based on the brain, to put this tool that we've been talking about in context about how you use it. How would
Mhm.
that be?
That'd be great.
Okay. So the first thing that's important is that we accept that after we've had such a horrific, traumatic experience, that we will never be the same.
Mhm.
There's no going back. There will always be some of that in your brain. Okay?
Mhm.
That's true for everyone. And although these experiences are incredibly extreme, anyone who's had them will have other experiences, not at the same level of feeling like you're going to be annihilated, but will have death of a loved one. The more you love people, the more you'll lose, and other traumas. So it works the same. But the first thing is to say, this is serious enough, and I'm getting goose pimples thinking of some of my own traumatic experiences, and one in particular. But um, that I will never be the same, and I need to accept that. I'm a different person now. I've gone through a door of experience in my brain that I cannot turn around and go back out, and that did not happen. It happened. It is stored in my unconscious mind, in my amygdala. The question, we don't have power over that. We can't go back, but we can say, I have choices. Who am I? What kind of a person am I? I'm a loving person. I'm facing this challenge of needing to heal from an incredibly horrific hurt, where there was surprise, there was violence, it was harmful on all levels. The question is, people around the world are facing this kind of trauma. Who am I and what do I want to do about it? And if you decide to line yourself up with brain science, then you would use EBT, and I'm going to tell you exactly how you'd live your life.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay. The first thing is to, even though, let's say you're depressed, let's say you're overwhelmed, let's say you're shut down, let's say you're numb. The first thing is to acknowledge, just the way you acknowledge that you will never be the same. You will be different in whatever way you are, but you're different. The next is to acknowledge that your natural state in your brain, the brain that you have, is joy. And what I mean by joy, based on neuroscience, not psychology, is that your brain is in connection. And when you're really connected to the love inside of you, to your higher purpose, to the sense of the goodness of your own precious sacred life, even if it's a gritty joy where you feel really, really miserable, but you're present to the deeper meanings of your life, that's best for your physiology. And it's also best for healing. Your brain is capable. Anyone that wants to come to me, come to me. And what I'll show you is that you can actually go from a stressful moment all the way to joy if you use your brain's resiliency pathways, which you do in EBT. It wants you to go to joy. So you say, the second thing is acknowledge that even though you may not feel it or even believe you can do it, your natural state is in joy. And this is how you then live your life. And this is really very practical. You wake up in the morning and you feel, let's say you check your brain, and let's say you're at brain state 4 or 5, stressed or totally overwhelmed, doesn't matter. You use your thinking brain and you say to yourself, I know that I could be depressed all day. I could be stressed all day. I know that all the people I know are really stressed. I choose joy. I know my brain can get there. Not lately, but I know that it's built, it's designed, it's evolved to get there. I choose joy. And then you get up and you're going to go have breakfast or whatever you're going to do, and you don't feel joy. Again, it's not happy, it's connected. It's connected to you can feel it in your body that you are present to the realities of your body. And then when you don't feel good, you don't ignore it. What we're used to doing, particularly if we've had trauma, is ignoring our pain. And that means we're essentially ignoring ourselves. Okay, we're used to just hanging out at a bad mood or a mediocre mood or just bad, all these stress states. These are mediocre stress states. That perpetuates the problem in the brain, which is the brain is now in stress. So instead of just accepting a bad mood or even a really bad mood, when you're not feeling in that joy, you say to yourself 4 words. These are magical words. And because what we assume when we don't feel joy is that we're bad, or there's something wrong with us, or we have to worry, or we have to analyze, or we have to overthink, or we have to go do an online search, or we have to replay it in our mind a million times. That's called secondary stress, and that's what blocks us from healing. So with EBT, you start off and you say the magic words, which are, it's not me. The reason I feel so bad, because these circuits control all of our physiology, all our stress chemicals, all the things that are going, it's not me that is making me feel bad. It's a wire in my brain.
Okay.
Now, when you say those words, it's a wire in my brain, it stops you from doing all of the things that you would do to waste your time of overthinking and and it keeps you from not loving and accepting yourself, because you can't blame yourself for a wire in your unconscious mind. We didn't even know you could rewire them until 2010. And you didn't put that wire in your brain. That wire got into your brain and it got stuck there. So you say, it's not me, it's just a wire. And then you accept, this is the important part, then you accept that for who you are right now with this history that you've had, the trauma that you had, the way that you're feeling right now makes perfect sense. And once you give yourself that acceptance and that love, the stress subsides. And this being stressed about being stressed and all that waste of time, all that numbing and all of those words, they stop. And you can at least love and accept yourself for who you are right then. And you either choose to accept and love yourself because it's just a wire, you can always rewire it later, or you use the cycle tool that I mentioned and you just zap that circuit. You weaken it. You unravel the emotions. It takes 2 to 3 minutes. I mean, in a therapy session, you can take 20 minutes to do it, but it's generally really fast because emotions are quick. So in other words, you either accept it for who you are and accept yourself and love yourself and stop the rumination and the overload and the self-judgment and the shutdowns, and so you become in joy, or you say, okay, I'm going to roll up my sleeve. And we do this in groups where you have a group. So if someone will listen to you use the tool or you listen to them, but, or you can do it alone or you can write it out, but it's the same brain process. And what happens is, you know, that you have then begun to completely rewire or to weaken the root cause of your problem. And that not only makes you feel joyful, but makes you feel proud of yourself and powerful because you're doing something about the root cause. You do that and you heal.
That's
That's
amazing, Laurel. I love it. Now I feel like we just did 100 million episodes. I don't know. I forget how many I've done, and we've never talked about this before. But it does sound like it's magic. I mean, it's very reassuring to think it's so accessible and it's free and it's on demand all the time. It's like the best of all worlds. So I know we don't have that many more minutes, but we're so hopefully all my listeners are going to be like, oh my gosh, now I want to learn as much as I can as fast as possible. Where should they go start learning more?
Well, there's one hub. There's 2
Mhm,
things I'll share with you.
mhm.
One is that I have a lot of books, but I'm coming out with a new book in February of 2026, which is It's Just a Wire. They should definitely get that book because it shows you exactly how to do this.
Okay.
But healing is the real way, and there's a hub called ebtconnect.net. It's also, the short form is EBT. It's like food stamps, ebt.org. You go there and get a membership. And with that membership, I would suggest the community membership so you have people every single day that you can work with. And all you have to do is put in the coupon JOY, JOY, for the community membership, and you get a 30% discount. Once you get that, you have access to this incredible app that will guide you through all of the pathways and the trauma pathways. But you have community. You've got a forum board. You've got absolutely every day you can drop into telephone groups that are completely confidential where you can listen to other people do this. You can actually get in a private group too. You can do a lot of things. I would suggest counting on about 6 months of after about 6 weeks, you will not go back. Once you actually learn to do this, you will have seen so much change that you'll want to stay with it. And then you just stay with it for, we have studies of 18 weeks, of people even 6 years later are better. But most people stay with, the average person gets into a group where they have 5 or 6 other people that they have as a support system, and they have a certified EBT provider. And on the average, they stay about 57 weeks because it's affecting not only the trauma, but the life they're living now, which is full of stress. And they want to essentially just change their brain until they've cleared all that trauma. And they're living at a higher state where they stay in that connected state with more joy and more freedom naturally. We want natural change, and that takes you changing the brain over time so the brain learns not the stress and trauma habit, but the joy and freedom habit.
Thanks, Laura. I'm really grateful that you came on the show. Honestly, it's just opened my eyes so much, and I feel it's not traumatic. It's just overwhelming because there's so much more to learn. And when you mentioned 2010, that seems like yesterday. I know we're older, you and I, but my gosh, the science is just improving. And I guess the way I'm processing and reflecting on our conversation is it's so helpful to think of what's going on in here as just the same as like lifting weights and taking the time and sitting. When you do exercise to fatigue, right, it's hurting. And I was just thinking, my class yesterday I took, and I was like, oh, this is so painful. But way I think, I'm like, okay, this is going to be like 60 seconds, right? It's going to take 60 seconds of pain, and then my body's going to grow and do better. And if you think of like sitting with that trauma for, like you just said, just 3 minutes, it's the same concept. Just like sit with it as if it's a workout and powering through, because you will get stronger and you will heal, and you have to break through it. You just have to bust through the wires, you said. um,
But Katie, one thing in particular is EBT is set up to be extremely gentle and forgiving and loving. And so
no, but I'm just thinking the first part sounds like power through and then get to joy. Because
no, no,
it's like
it's not.
it's not that
The
bad.
No, no, no. You start with the first thing you do when you come in, because you'll see me, because I'm on right there on the video and on the audio practically every day, and there's other providers. You start by learning how to create joy.
Okay. Well, I
And
believe
then
you. I believe you, Lauren. Laurel, sorry, Laurel. I totally believe you. I know we do have to wrap up, but I we will put all of that in the show notes. And is there any other closing comment you want to share with our listeners?
yes, please understand that really is just a circuit in your brain. I want you to just take a moment to envision that horrible event put a cluster of circuits in your brain. They are not you. You can use your thinking brain to clear them out. And as you do, what will happen to you is you will find more love and more freedom than you ever thought possible just by going to the wire. It's just a wire, it's not me, and I can rewire it.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Laurel. That was so empowering and helpful. And just, I feel like everyone's going to listen to this and get started right away. Yeah. So it just sounds so doable, and it's all the things I mentioned. So thank you for being so brilliant and patient and taking your own trauma and using it to help so many. It's just fantastic. Yeah. Big love over to you, from the East Coast over the West. um,
Yes,
yeah, and look out and say hi to that Golden Gate Bridge. It's so
I
pretty
sure
where you
will.
live.
I will. Okay, and big love to you for all
Yeah, definitely. So we'll put everything in show notes, listeners, and February is right around the corner, and I'm not sure when this will drop exactly. So if it's out there, simultaneously, you could probably go where books are sold and get a copy right away. So thanks so much. And self care is thriving, surviving. And now we have a whole nother tool to put in our tool belt to continue this journey together. So thanks so much. Take care.